following content may contain visuals that are disturbing, graphic, or sensitive in nature. Viewer discretion is advised. This material is intended for mature audiences and may not be suitable for all viewers. Please exercise caution while watching, and if you find such content distressing, we recommend discontinuing viewing. This disclaimer is provided to ensure awareness and to prioritize viewer well-being.
You're watching News 9 Live, our top story at this hour. It's been over a month since Hamas initiated a deadly war against southern Israel, resulting in the deaths of about 1,400 people and the abduction of over 220 Israeli individuals as hostages. Since then, Israel has been conducting airstrikes and ground operations in Gaza. Let's take you through the latest updates on day 35. Israel has agreed for 4-hour daily pauses in military ops in Gaza. 4-hour pauses won't affect war efforts, says Israeli Defense Minister. 36th IDF soldier has been killed in the Gaza offensive. At least 10,812 Palestinians and nearly 4,500 children have been killed in Gaza, says the Health Ministry. Israel's war would set Gaza and West Bank economy back by decades, says UN report. Not seeking to govern Gaza, says Prime Minister of Israel Benjamin Netanyahu. The Houthis launched ballistic missiles at various targets in Israel. The U.S., which has been supporting Israel in its war against Hamas, believes that the death toll in Gaza may be higher than 10,000 as reported by the Gaza Health Ministry. Israeli officials, U.S. President Joe Biden and others may have challenged the ministry's figures as exaggerated. Assistant Secretary of State Barbara Leaf told the U.S. House panel that the U.S. thinks the figures are very high, and it could be that they are even higher than they are being cited, adding that this is very possible. She added that the United States officials draw on sourcing from a variety of folks who are on the ground, but provided no other details of their assessment. Israeli forces fought Hamas terrorists and inched their way closer to 2 big hospitals in northern Gaza as the plight of civilians in the besieged Palestinian territory worsened. Many continue to flee the embattled north to the south.
Smoke rises behind Gaza's Al-Shifa hospital. In the courtyard and corridors are thousands of displaced people. At the gates, body bags. Israeli forces fought Hamas militants among ruined buildings in the north of the Gaza Strip on Thursday, inching their way closer to Al-Shifa and another main hospital in Gaza City. In the emergency room, this man says he and others tried to head south, but when they reached the road, a tank fired at them. Others fled along a frontline route. The White House said on Thursday Israel has agreed to pause operations in northern Gaza for 4 hours a day from Thursday, the first sign of respite in Gaza's war, allowing people to flee along 2 humanitarian corridors. Some of those escaping on Thursday said they feared another Nakba, the catastrophe of their mass dispossession after Israel was founded in 1948.
They are driving people to schools and scaring them so they would leave. What we see today is a plan for a second exodus.
What do things look like behind us? Death and destruction. Death and destruction.
US President Joe Biden says he's seeking a longer halt of 3 days to help secure the release of hostages held by Hamas.
We're hopeful. Things are moving along.
Israel unleashed its assault on Gaza in response to a cross-border raid by Hamas gunmen, who killed 1,400 people, mostly civilians, as well as kidnapping about 240. But the plight of Palestinians trapped in the besieged enclave has stoked global calls for a ceasefire, which is rejected by Israel and its main ally, the United States. Palestinian officials said more than 10,800 Gaza residents had been killed as of Thursday, about 40% of them children. At a humanitarian conference in Paris on Thursday, officials from about 80 countries and organisations were trying to coordinate a response. Jan Egeland heads the Norwegian Refugee Council.
We cannot wait a minute more for a humanitarian ceasefire across Gaza for all of the civilian population there. And we cannot wait a minute more for a lifting of the siege, which is collective punishment of 1 million children.
On Thursday, the White House said that Israel agreed to pause military operation in parts of North Gaza for 4 hours a day, but there was no sign of a let-up in the fighting that has killed thousands and laid waste to the seaside enclave. The pauses, which would allow people to flee along 2 humanitarian corridors and could be used for the release of hostages. But Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu suggested any pauses would be scattered, and there was no official confirmation of a plan for recurring breaks. President Joe Biden secured a second pathway for civilians but did not confirm recurring breaks. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu clarified the fighting continues against Hamas, but with specific location and timing pauses on the ground of northern Gaza. There were no reports of lull fighting. Each side has reported with intense street battles and casualties. Israel's assault in response to a Hamas raid has caused thousands of deaths, a humanitarian crisis, and an ongoing negotiations for a ceasefire as well as hostage release. Moving on, France is hosting a week-long International Humanitarian Conference on Gaza in Paris. Some 80 countries and international organizations met in Paris on Thursday to coordinate aid and assess how to help the wounded in the Palestinian enclave of Gaza. The Palestinian Authority's Prime Minister was present at the conference, but Israel was not invited. French officials said Israel was being kept informed of developments. France offered support for Israel after the deadly 7th October attack by Hamas Islamists, yet Israel's retaliatory bombardment has raised concerns as civilian casualties have soared.
Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, President Macron, thank you for hosting this conference. We are here to support civilians in Gaza. Of course, nothing justifies the abhorrent acts of terror by Hamas in Israel on 7 October, which I utterly condemned. Israelis and others were brutally killed or abducted, and I call once again for the unconditional return of all hostages. Now, civilians in Gaza, including children and women, face a never-ending humanitarian nightmare. Their neighborhoods wiped out, their loved ones killed, bombs raining down while being denied life's very basics: food, water, medicine, electricity. Some life-saving aid is beginning to trickle into Gaza, but let's face it, it's a drop in the ocean. The needs are enormous. We must step up to assist and protect civilians in Gaza. That means an immediate humanitarian ceasefire. It means ensuring full respect of international humanitarian law. It means protecting hospitals, UN facilities, shelters, and schools. It means unfettered, safe, and sustained access to bring and distribute supplies at much greater scale, volume, and frequency, including fuel. And it means investing in the $1.2 billion humanitarian appeal that the United Nations has just launched to help the people of Gaza. I urge your support. Now is the time for concrete action. Together, we can help ease this terrible human suffering. We can help civilians in Gaza see at last, and at the very least, a glimmer of hope, a sign of solidarity, and a signal that the world sees their plight and cares enough to act.
French President Emmanuel Macron has said that there is a need for a humanitarian pause very quickly in Gaza. Macron said that, quote unquote, civilians must be protected. That's indispensable and non-negotiable and is an immediate necessity, close quote.
Aujourd'hui, la situation est grave et se dégrade chaque jour davantage. Dans l'immédiat, c'est à la protection des civils qu'il nous faut travailler. Il faut pour cela une pause humanitaire très rapide et il nous faut œuvrer à un cessez-le-feu. Celui-ci doit pouvoir devenir possible. Et dans l'objectif qu'au-delà du drame que vivent aujourd'hui de trop nombreuses familles israéliennes et palestiniennes, or nous partageons des valeurs et avons des engagements communs qui nous amènent aujourd'hui, d'accord avec les autorités israéliennes et palestiniennes, à nous préoccuper de la situation humanitaire à Gaza. Les civils doivent être protégés et c'est absolument indispensable. Ce n'est pas négociable. C'est une nécessité immédiate.
An explosion was heard in close proximity to Gaza's Al-Shifa hospital in the early hours of Friday. People gathered outside the hospital entrance in Gaza City could be heard shouting and were seen fleeing from the site. Yemen's Houthis have launched a batch of ballistic missiles at various targets on Israel, including military targets in Eilat, the group's military spokesperson Yahya Sarriya said on Thursday.
Our armed forces, with the help of Allah, have launched a batch of ballistic missiles at various sensitive targets belonging to the Israeli entity in the southern occupied territories, including military targets in the area. By the grace of Allah, the operation has achieved its objectives successfully and resulted in direct hits on the specified targets, despite the enemy's silence about it. The Yemeni armed forces continue to carry out their military operations in support of the Palestinian people's just grievances until the Israeli aggression against our brother in Gaza stops.
Israel's chief of the General Staff, Herzi Halevi, and Israel's Shin Bet security service, Ronen Bar, met ground forces inside Gaza. A video released by Israeli army said to show Halevi meeting with Bar and other commanders.
זה נקודת החוזק המרכזית בינתיים במלחמה הזאת, אתם הזכרתם את זה, אני מדגיש את זה. שותפויות כל הזמן. אני יושב פה עם רונן, זה עובד מאוד חזק, ואני אומר לכם, נמצאים פה כולם, כל צה"ל. אני מסתובב, אני רואה צה"ל בכל הפינות עובד. כולם עושים הכל, רק כדי שאתם תהיו הכי חזקים שאפשר. תאמו איתם, קבלו את זה, מדי פעם תסבירו טוב בזמן מה אתם צריכים. אין דבר שלא יעשו כדי שתעבדו טוב. מאוד מרשים, שהיא חזק קדימה, יסודי. בעוד הקצב, אנחנו מאחוריכם. יש הערכה מטורפת, באמת, חסרת תקדים לדעתי, גם בציבור, גם בדרג המדיני וגם בחמאס. וזה הולך ומשתפר בכל המקומות האלה, אז גם תעבירו את זה לחיילים. וכנציג השב"כ, אנחנו במלחמה עובדים בשביל צה"ל.
Israel's military released a video that it says shows strikes on alleged Hezbollah targets in Lebanon. IDF said it was retaliation for attacks by the Shiite terrorist group towards Israeli territory on the previous day. The black and white aerial footage is set to show fighter jet strikes on Hezbollah infrastructure and technological equipment, the IDF said. Hezbollah has been exchanging fire with Israeli forces across the border since the bombardment of Gaza began. The recent conflict, which started on 7th of October after Hamas terrorists burst over the border, killing 1,400 Israelis and taking 250 people hostage. Few details are known of the Israeli military's ground operation as it pushes deeper into Gaza, fighting Hamas. A small group of foreign journalists was given a rare view of Israel's invasion on the shattered fringes of Gaza City. Here's a look.
It's a workshop for weapons.
Lieutenant Colonel Ito is talking to a Reuters journalist on the shattered fringes of Gaza City. Few details are known of the Israeli military's ground operations as it pushes deeper into Gaza, fighting Hamas. Reuters was part of a small group of foreign journalists given rare but brief access to its troops. It only lasted an hour and a half, and on the condition that any footage recorded was reviewed by the Israeli army, although no footage was removed. Ido is only the officer's first name. They didn't give his name in full. He's just shown what he says was 2 floors of Hamas weapons workshops hidden underneath a small family apartment. This is a child's room.
From houses like this, 1,500 Israelis were murdered or slaughtered. It's been a long 2 weeks of fighting. It's not an operation, it's a war. It's going to last time. It's going to take us time. Until Hamas no longer exists, we're trying not to harm innocent people. We give all the people that live here a good heads up that we're coming. They need to evacuate till the Gaza Lake, which is going south. So we know that every people that are here are enemy. We have not seen any civilians here, only Hamas.
Ido says the workshop weapons included drones, seen here in these boxes, although Reuters couldn't verify what was made in the ruined building. All of the buildings here are ruined, every one in sight. Dirt mounds have been pushed up by the military to give protection to army vehicles parked around them. Many vehicles also have this sturdy metal rigging mounted on top to protect against those drones. The message that they're not trying to harm civilians is consistent. This soldier has been here longer than some others.
I was one of the first soldiers that came in this neighborhood. And yes, when we came in, we weren't shooting when we just came in. We were getting shot at. They were shooting at us. So we had to shoot back to protect our lives. I'll tell you something. The Israeli army is here to protect innocent people.
These were civilians fleeing the city in video obtained by Reuters. Gaza's health authorities, which are run by Hamas, say over 10,000 Palestinians have been killed in the conflict, and 40% of those children. The U.S. government, Israel's biggest ally, has recently put the number in the thousands without giving specific numbers. Reports of close fighting deep in the city has coincided with footage like this of Hamas fighters, which Reuters could not verify either. The Israeli military says it's allowing humanitarian pauses in the fighting at specific times to allow more civilians to flee.
Reuters has denied suggestions by media advocacy group Honest reporting that it and other international news organizations had prior knowledge of the 7th October attack by Hamas. The Israeli government demanded explanations from Reuters and 3 other news groups regarding the Honest reporting article which questioned their work with Gaza-based photojournalists during the Hamas assault. Honest Reporting, a self-proclaimed charitable organization, stated on its website that it aims to address ideological bias in journalism and the media, particularly concerning its impact on Israel. The organization clarified that it wasn't making accusations of collusion, but rather raising ethical concerns about news coverage. Reuters acquired photographs from 2 Gaza-based freelance photographers who were present at the border on the morning of 7th of October, with whom it had no prior affiliation. The UN High Commissioner for Human Rights, Volker Turk, said that war crimes have been committed by both Israel and Hamas in the ongoing conflict. He said that Hamas's 7th October attack was a war crime, but he also added that collective punishment of Palestinians by Israel in Gaza is a war crime.
Rafah crossing has been the symbolic lifeline for the last month for the 2.3 million in Gaza. The lifeline has been unjustly outrageously thin. These are the gates to a living nightmare. A nightmare where people have been suffocating under persistent bombardment, mourning their families, struggling for water, for food, for electricity.
Moving on, Saudi Arabia will host summits of Arab and Islamic nations, including Iran, in the coming weekend to discuss the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. The meeting aims to find a framework to stop the war in Gaza. The back-to-back summits in Riyadh could signal the start of a higher-profile diplomatic push with Saudi Arabia taking advantage of its position as a historic champions of Palestinians, combined with its interest in potentially recognizing Israel one day and undercutting the Iranian influence in the region. More than 1,500 pro-Palestinian protesters called for a ceasefire in Gaza on the steps of the New York Public Library in Midtown Manhattan on Thursday.
And lift the siege on Gaza now. Now is the moment for the world to take action against the genocide of Palestinians. Our struggle is 75 years in the making, and our victory is inevitable.
I stand here in my coolly given white privilege to say that you don't have to be Palestinian to stand with the Palestinian people. You do not have to be Palestinian to understand that the slaughter of almost 5,000 children is unacceptable and a war crime.
The India-U.S. 2+2 ministerial dialogue has begun with External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar and Defence Minister Rajnath Singh, calling the partnership between the two nations critical for ensuring a free, open and rules-bound Indo-Pacific region. The two sides would also discuss the Indo-Pacific region, Russia and Ukraine, along with bilateral issues. Delhi is part of the Quad alliance alongside the United States, Australia and Japan, a grouping that positions itself as a bulwark against China's growing assertiveness in the Asia-Pacific region, claiming that the India-U.S. bilateral relationship has seen a growing convergence of strategic interests in enhanced defense, security and intelligence cooperation. The Defense Minister emphasized that defense remains one of the most important pillars of our bilateral relationship. S. Jaishankar, during the 2+2 dialogue, mentioned exploring domains like critical tech, civil outer space collaboration and critical minerals.
Very much. It's always wonderful to be in India. We're building on a rather remarkable year of engagement, and I think it's just evidence of the fact that we have not only the strongest bilateral partnership we've ever had, but also a regional one and indeed a global one. And that was further evidenced by India's leadership of the G20 this year. And as Jai said, we have a lot to do, including with our defense colleagues, so I'm very much looking forward to that. And I think it's further evidence of our resolute focus from the United States on the Indo-Pacific, our region for the future. And the future is actually now, and we're building it now, and we're building it together with India. So I look very much forward to good conversations. Very good to be back. Thank you.
Let me just, Secretary Blinken, Tony, let me welcome you. I think this is your third visit this year?
That sounds right.
But, and of course we've been meeting elsewhere. But this meeting, this visit of yours, I think has a particular significance because one, we need to follow up on the Prime Minister's June visit and the President's coming here in September. So there's a lot of bilateral stuff we need to do. And two, of course, this is the 2+2, so we take a broader view of what we're doing. Then, of course, as Quad members, there's the Indo-Pacific that we're focusing on. And finally, we look at global regional issues, and I think what's happening in West Asia, Middle East, to you folks. That, I think, is a very big concern right now. I look forward to discussing those and other matters with you. Once again, a very warm welcome.
Washington hopes a tighter defense relationship shall help wean India off Russia. New Delhi's primary military supplier. Recently, MEA revealed that the ministers would use this opportunity to advance the future roadmap for the India-U.S. partnership, aligning with the vision outlined by Prime Minister Narendra Modi and President Joe Biden in their discussions held in June and September this year. Blinken arrived in New Delhi late Thursday from South Korea, the latest leg of a marathon trip that has included G7 foreign ministers meeting in Japan, which sought to find common ground on the Gaza conflict, and a whirlwind tour of West Asia.
Secretary Blinken, let me welcome you.
To Delhi now, which is breathing easy this Friday after receiving light rainfall. There is some respite from pollution, with the showers reducing the amount of suspended particulate matter in the air. The rain came even as the Delhi government had been trying to implement the idea of artificial rain through cloud seeding to improve the quality of air. Currently, Stage 4 of the Graded Response Action Plan, or GRAP, has been implemented in the national capital after the city's air quality plummeted to the severe plus category. The Delhi government has meanwhile told Supreme Court that there is a decrease of about 6% vehicle kilometers travelled during the odd-even scheme. The government says there is a positive impact in reduction of the air pollution contributed by vehicles, besides reduction of congestion on Delhi roads due to the odd-even drive. The Delhi government has also asked Punjab government to take effective action, as 93% of stubble burning originates in the state. The Punjab and Haryana governments have been told to monitor farm fires and submit daily reports. The centre has allotted funds to the tune of around 3,333 crore rupees to deal with Punjab and Haryana's stubble problem since 2019. Amid high pollution levels in the national capital, the Delhi Traffic Police issued over 1,300 challans in a single day to vehicle owners driving without PUC certificates. Meanwhile, Delhi Environment Minister Gopal Rai spoke about the rain's positive impact on the AQI level. Some terrible news coming in from Manipur. Police sources have reported the discovery of bullet-ridden bodies of a man and a woman in two different areas of Imphal in the past 24 hours. This comes just 2 days after 4 Kuki-Zo people were abducted from a vehicle at a security checkpoint in the Kangpoki district of Manipur. Police sources have stated that these bodies most likely belong to the abducted people, also noting that formal identification was yet to be done. The 4 people who were abducted were members of a soldier's family. Manipur has remained on the edge since the 3rd of May, when ethnic conflict broke out between the Kukis and Meiteis. Moving on, the Jammu and Kashmir's police special investigation agency is conducting raids across multiple locations in the Union territory. The raids, spanning Srinagar, Anantnag and Pulwama districts in the Kashmir Valley, aim to uncover illegal activities related to terror funding. Here's a brief summary. CI is conducting raids in connection with an ongoing terror funding case. Raids are underway in Srinagar, Anantnag and Pulwama districts in the Kashmir Valley. The case involves illegal raising and laundering of crime proceeds by accused individuals. Inquiry reveals funds amounting to 85 crore rupees raised and laundered in less than 2 years. Funds suspected to have been used in secessionism as well as terrorism. SIA registered a case at Kashmir police station over inquiry findings. Spokesperson in the Ministry of External Affairs, Arindam Bagchi, said on Thursday that India has got a second consular access to the 8 former Indian Navy officers who were sentenced to death by the Qatar court on the 7th of November. Arindam Bagchi said, and I quote him, "The judgment is confidential. There is a court of first instance that gave the judgment, which was shared with the legal team. Considering all legal options, an appeal has been filed. We are in touch with the Qatari authorities." Bagchi further stated that Indian authorities are in touch with the family members of the 8 naval officers, and Foreign Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar has also met with them. He added that India will continue providing legal assistance to them. The court sentenced 8 naval veterans, all employees of Doha-based Dara Global, to death on 26th of October on undisclosed charges. They were arrested in August 2022 for espionage. Prime Minister Narendra Modi criticized Rajasthan Congress's government, accusing the party of supporting terrorism, allowing groups like the PFI to rally freely. Listen in.
उदयपुर में कन्हैयालाल जी के साथ आतंकी घटना कांग्रेस सरकार पर बहुत बड़ा दाग है। ऐसी जघन्य वारदात उदयपुर में इसलिए हुई क्योंकि यहां आतंकियों के साथ सहानुभूति रखने वाली कांग्रेस की सरकार है। साथियों, कांग्रेस सरकार की तुष्टीकरण की नीति ने राजस्थान की संस्कृति, राजस्थान की विरासत, राजस्थान के गौरव को खतरे में डाल दिया है। जैसे हालात राजस्थान में पहले कभी नहीं बने, वो पिछले 5 साल में हमने देखे हैं। किसने सोचा था कि राजस्थान में कभी रामनवमी की शोभा यात्रा और कांवड़ यात्रा पर भी प्रतिबंध लग सकता है। लेकिन ये पाप कांग्रेस सरकार ने किया है। क्या ऐसी कांग्रेस सरकार को राजस्थान में रहने देना चाहिए? ऐसी कांग्रेस को राजस्थान में जगह मिलनी चाहिए? आज यहां कांग्रेस सरकार है, इसलिए पीएफआई जैसे आतंकी संगठन बेखौफ होकर रैलियां निकालते हैं।
In some other news, the former head of a centre-right political party in Catalonia, Alejo Vidal Quadras, is in stable condition after being shot by men on a motorcycle. It comes as Spain's acting Prime Minister, Pedro Sanchez, appears set for an amnesty deal with Catalan separatists that Vidal Quadras' party calls a humiliation. Take a look.
Former head of a conservative political party in Spain's Catalonia region is in stable condition after being shot in the face in Madrid. That's according to police, who say they're hunting a gunman and an accomplice who pulled up near Alejo Vidal Quadras on a motorcycle, shot him, then drove off. Police have not established a motive for the attack, but it comes at a politically tumultuous time for Spain. The day of the attack coincides with Spain's acting Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez clinching an amnesty deal with Catalan separatists that Vidal Quadras' party called a, quote, total and irreversible humiliation. He used to lead the Catalan branch of the People's Party, which is on the center-right and opposes Sanchez's socialists. He's also a member of the far-right Vox party. The amnesty deal is part of a wider power-sharing agreement made Thursday between the socialists and a separatist political party that could give Sanchez another term in office. It's been met with protests like these Wednesday night outside the Socialist Party headquarters. The amnesty deal could absolve as many as 1,400 separatist activists if it's approved by Congress. Prime Minister Sanchez expressed solidarity with Vidal Quadras on social media and wished him a speedy recovery.
UK's Interior Minister Suella Braverman is facing fire over an explosive article accusing the Metropolitan Police of political bias. She criticized policing of pro-Palestinian marches in comments made without the Downing Street's approval. UK Prime Minister Rishi Sunak is facing growing calls to sack Braverman after she suggested officers play favourites when policing protest and claimed they largely ignore pro-Palestinian mobs during recent protests against the Israel-Hamas war. SpaceX launched a Dragon spacecraft to the International Space Station on Thursday to deliver supplies, food, equipment, and part of a laser communication relay system. The company's 29th commercial resupply services mission took off from NASA's Kennedy Space Center in Florida. Here's a look.
And liftoff of CRS-29 carrying cargo, research,
Cold,
and a laser
downrange.
And a laser communication.
Engine pressure is nominal.
A laser communications demonstrator to the International Space Station, now in its 25th year of orbital operations.
Stage 1, boost spec startup.
Love those views on your screen. You could see stage separation with the first stage heading back to land, and the MVAC engine on your screen lit up. And on your left-hand side, this watches Falcon 9 touches down.
Stage 1 landing leg deploy. Stage 1 landing confirmed. Wow.
Dragon separation confirmed.
And there you can see on your screen, the Dragon spacecraft has separated from the Falcon 9 second stage.
Residents of Kenya's Garissa have been displaced from their homes amid heavy flooding that has inundated towns across East Africa. Somalia's National Disaster Management Agency said on Wednesday that 29 people there had also died and more than 3 lakh forced to flee their homes. Take a look.
Kenya's Garissa is underwater. People here displaced from their homes amid the heavy rains that have inundated towns across East Africa. This is resident Abdallah Dulo.
Our houses have been demolished, our farms are flooded, our chicken and goats have drowned. Our cooking pans, mattresses, seats, overall we've lost many things because of the floods.
In Kenya, the floods have killed at least 15 people, according to the Kenya Red Cross. Red Cross Regional Coordinator Mohammed Abdul Qadir says the situation is dire.
There is an urgent need for humanitarian support because there are displacement, there are areas which are cut off,
And this is a rain that, has rained all over the region, not a specific place.
Somalia's National Disaster Management Agency said on Wednesday that 29 people there had also died, and more than 300,000 forced to flee their homes. The regional deluge has been caused by the combined effect of two weather phenomena, El Niño and the Indian Ocean Dipole, said Nazanin Mashiri, a climate analyst at the International Crisis Group. Those climate patterns impact ocean surface temperatures and cause above-average rainfall.
A report on climate change claims that 2023 is guaranteed to be the hottest year on record due to unprecedented temperature anomalies. The report was published by the Copernicus Climate Change Service. Deputy Director of CCCS, Samantha Burgess, added that October 23 has been identified as the warmest October globally. She emphasized the pressing need for urgent and immediate climate action leading up to COP28.
So October 2023 was the warmest October on record globally, with an average surface temperature of 15.3 degrees Celsius. What this means is this last month was 0.85 degrees Celsius above the recent average and 0.4 degrees Celsius above the previous warmest October. So the only time that we've ever had a bigger difference between the previous warmest month and the current one is last month in September. So October 2023 is almost as shocking as September 2023 was.
In 2015, South Africa pledged emission cuts at the Paris Climate Summit. Now it's set to miss the 2030 targets due to bureaucratic delays and a power crisis at Eskom. The nation aimed to reduce emissions from 442 million to 250 to 420 million metric tons by decommissioning coal plants. Similar setbacks are seen globally, with Canada, ExxonMobil and Shell backtracking on climate commitments. The United Nations warns fossil fuel output will far exceed Paris goals by the year 2030.
This was the Paris Climate Summit in 2015, when South Africa was among nations pledging to reduce their emissions. Now the world's 11th biggest greenhouse gas emitter is set to miss those legally binding targets, 3 senior government officials have confirmed. Under the Paris Climate Accords, South Africa vowed to cut emissions to between 350 and 420 million metric tons by 2030. That's from 442 million in 2020. To achieve this, it plans to decommission 8 coal-fired power plants. However, switching to a renewable energy policy has been hampered by bureaucratic delays. And then there's the power crisis at state-owned utility Eskom. South Africa has been suffering blackouts of sometimes up to 10 hours a day for the past 18 months. That now makes the emissions target unrealistic, said the officials, who declined to be named because the information is not yet public. The Environment Ministry said the country remained committed to achieving its Paris Agreement commitments and that it was too early to say the 2030 targets would be missed. In August, however, the Electricity Minister said the decommissioning of power plants must be delayed, given the power crisis which he described as of existential proportions. But South Africa is not alone. Several wealthy countries and companies have been backtracking on climate pledges. That includes Canada, which has said it will miss its 2030 targets. Global oil and gas giants ExxonMobil and Shell have either delayed or abandoned shifting to renewables. On Wednesday, the United Nations said fossil fuel output by 2030 will be more than double levels consistent with the 2015 Paris climate goals.
Russian President Vladimir Putin arrived on Thursday to Astana for a rare visit abroad. He was welcomed at the airport by the President of Kazakhstan, Kassym-Jomart Tokayev. Thursday's visit is Putin's third known trip abroad since the Hague-based International Crime Court, ICC, issued an arrest warrant in March for the Russian leader on war crime charges, something the Kremlin strongly rejects. Kazakhstan, like China and Kyrgyzstan, the two other countries Putin has visited recently, is not a signatory to the ICC.
Были весьма результативными. Мы обстоятельно обсудили весь спектр двухсторонних связей, выслушали доклады руководства министерств, ведомств, крупнейших компаний по ключевым направлениям российско-казахстанского взаимодействия.
That's all we have in this bulletin, but for all the news and analysis, keep watching News 9 Live.